Bismillah, read.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وليس في شيء من الصلوات صلاة بعينها لا يجوز غيرها إلا كما ترون.
Okay, what do you understand from that ibarat there? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وليس في شيء من الصلوات قراءة سورة بعينها لا يجوز غيرها لإطلاق ما تلونه. What do you understand from that, Imam Yusuf? Tell me. وليس في شيء من الصلوات قراءة سورة بعينها لا يجوز غيرها لإطلاق ما تلونه. If anybody from the online people can tell us what that ibarat means, you got a right picture on here, ne? Just tell us if you can work it out. Give you a minute, see if you can work it out for me. Work it out, you people. I'm asking the online people also. Tell me what it means. Come on, you want to give it a shot? Imam Yusuf, what are they saying there? وليس في شيء من الصلوات قراءة سورة بعينها لا يجوز غيرها الإطلاق ما تلونه. Luqman, what you understood from that? And the online people, what do I understand from that ibarat? Loud? What you say? Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. There's no farz qiraat in any salat. Farz, or rather, not, I won't say qiraat, but there's no farz. There's no specific surah to say that in this surah you have to read, or rather in this salat you have to read a surah. You got a choice of reading any surah. You got a choice of reading any surah. There's no, besides what we told you, that like it is wajib to read Surah Fatiha, and it's wajib to read, according to Abu Hanifa, one ayat, according to Sahibain, three short ayats, or one long ayat that equal to three ayats, etc., etc. That not, they're not speaking about that. They're saying like that you, like, for example, you have to read in Maghrib namaz, Qul huwallahu ahad mu'awwazatayn. You have to read in Zohr namaz, was-sama'i wat-tariq, etc., etc. There's nothing specific. You can read whatever you want to from the Quran, so long as you fulfill that criterion. According to Imam, the preferred madhab is this was right to read Surah Fatiha in the first two rakats, and to read a surah, or if not a surah, then according to Imam Abu Hanifa, even one short ayat, according to Sahibain, three short ayats, or one long ayat equal to three short ayats, right? So let's just now look at it. وَلَيْسَ فِي شَيْءٍ مِنَ الصَّلَوَاتِ قِرَاءَةُ سُورَةٍ بِعَيْنِهَا. And then there is not in any of the salawat قِرَاءَةُ سُورَةٍ بِعَيْنِهَا, the recitation of a specific surah, لا يجوز غيرها, to such an extent that nothing else is permissible besides that, لإطلاق ما تلونا, because of the generality of what we read. We said فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. So right, ويقرأ أي وقت بشيء من القرآن بشيء من الصلوات. In the next part, what I'm saying is, like, one is a person coincidentally every salah he reads, like, maybe every maghrib time he's reading Qul Wallahu Ahad, Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, but he make it mandatory upon himself. No, I must read the surah. If I don't read the surah here in the salah, is something wrong. There's no problem with that. So, like, for example, you the imam, you like to recite Surah Jinn, or you like to see the surah, or you like to recite that surah. You just, was your personal preference, you like to recite it, that's fine. There's no problem. But to make it compulsory, the point of, no, I have to recite the surah. If I don't recite the surah, my salah is not done. I've committed a crime. That's not right. That's what he's saying. وَيُكْرَهُ, it is makruh, أَيُّوَقِّتَ, that he fixes بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ, something to the Quran, any part of the Quran, بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الصَّلَوَاتِ, in any of the salawat, right? Right. لما فيه من هجرة لما فيه من هجر الباقي وإيهام التفضيل. Why you cannot fix? Because if you're going to make it mandatory upon yourself that every day I'm going to recite the surah, every day I'm going to recite the surah, what's going to happen? لما فيه من هجر الباقي, what's going to happen to the rest of the Quran? You're going to abandon the rest of the Quran. وإيهام التفضيل, and you're going to be giving the impression that this surah is more virtuous than the other surah, or this part of the Quran holds more virtue than the other part of the Quran, etc., which is wrong. You understood that? So now read all Ibarat. Now it's pretty simple. وليس في شيء وليس في شيء من الصلوات قراءة سورة بعينها لا يجوز غيرها لإطلاق ما تلون. There is not in any of the salat, right, the recitation of a specific surah, right? Surah بعينها, to such an extent that لا يجوز غيرها, that you consider it not permissible to recite anything besides it. لإطلاق ما تلون. Why? Because the text that exhorts us to recite a surah, recite the Quran, it is general, right? ويكره أن يوقت بشيء, right? ويكره, and it's makruh أن يوقت, that he fix something of the Quran, right? من الصلوات, I told you, I'm only going to read this. I'm not going to read anything else. I told you the reason, right? لما فيه من حجر الباقي, because you'll be abandoning the rest of the Quran. وإيهام التفضيل, and you're giving the impression that some of the Quran is more virtuous than the other, right? Carry on reading, inshallah, the next sabak, the next lesson. Right. This we discussed this. I told you this is a masala that is called Kirat Khalf al Imam, right? If you go to the big Darul Ulooms like Darul Ulooms, Daryalban, in those places, this one masla here is discussed over 1 week. Proofs, counter proofs, Hanafi proof, Shafi proof. Then they give the Hanafi answer to the Shafi, Shafi answer to the Hanafi. Inshallah, also next year you do, inshallah, when you do Tirmidhi Sharif, then Tirmidhi Sharif got a lot of fiqh in it, right? So they also you'll do this masla in quite a bit of detail. It's a famous masla called Al-Qira'atu Khalf al-Imami, right? So وَلَا يَقْرَأُ الْمُؤْتَمُ خَلْفَ الْإِمَامِ. According to the Hanafi madhab, that the muqtadi will not read behind the imam at all. When you are behind the imam, and we discussed this also in our tafsir class in detail, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَبِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So وَلَا يَقْرَأُ الْمُؤْتَمُ خَلْفَ الْإِمَامِ, the muqtadi will not read behind the imam. خِلَافًا لِلشَّافِعِيِّ, contrary to Shafi'i, fil Fatihati. So Imam Shafi only differs in the Surah Fatiha. Why? Because in Surah Fatiha he said, remember, Imam Shafi's proof is La salata illa bi Fatihatil Kitabi. There's no salah except with Surah Fatiha. So he's saying, look, you must recite the Surah Fatiha. Without the Muqtadi reciting the Surah Fatiha, salah will not be done, right? Lahu. So what is Imam Shafi's proof? He said, أن القراءة ركن من الأركان. He's saying, look here, Qiraat is a rukn of the salah, right? We know, even according to us, the Hanafi madhab, we say that Qiraat is part of the arkan of salat, right? Right? So he says, لو أن القراءة ركن من الأركان فيشتركان فيه. So if it is a rukn of the salat, right? So here, question here is, can you break up a surah that you recite the interesting question, you recite a long surah and you break it up in different. One, as I told you, I discussed this with you before. What is the Masnoon Qiraat? We told you from Tiwali Mufassal, Qisari Mufassal, Awsati Mufassal, and Qisari Mufassal. Tiwali Mufassal from Surah Hujurat al-Buruj, from Buruj to Surah Bayna. That's a Tiwali Mufassal. And Qisari Mufassal is from what? Is from Bayna till the end, right? That is the Masnoon Qirats, right? That's a separate issue. Now, another interesting thing here, since I don't know how to discuss this with you, but since somebody's brought it up here, what they're asking you here now is if you take a long surah and you break it up. When we were in Darul Uloom Azadville, Mawlana Fadhur Rahman, now Mawlana Fadhur Rahman, he also has some what you call tafarrudat. Tafarrudat means he has some maslas that is not like in keeping with the general, the mass of the other ulama. He was totally against this here. He was totally against breaking the surah up. Like even if you follow the sunnah qiraat, like you read 40 verses here in the first rakat, and you read 40 verses in the second rakat. So you take one surah and you break it up and you split it up. He say this is not proven from the sunnah. He say you choose from the what he said. I gave you what is the masnoon qiraat, right? What I told you what's the masnoon qiraat. You choose if you want to read a long surah from that one, you read a long surah from that one. If you want to read a short surah from that one, you read a short surah from that. But don't break it, don't split it up like how we do, we all do. Some say, "Aqimi salata liduluki shamsi ila ghasaqi layli," or we say, the Imam say, "Lillahi ma fi samawati wa ma fi al-ard wa in tubtu ma fi anfusikum aw tukhfu yuhasibkum bihillah." We do this all the time. But he was totally against this, and he got some proof of his. I can check for it and find it and try to share it with you. But anyway, most of our ulama don't agree with him to say that. Well, it's not a question of haram, halal. It's just a question of afdaliyat. So he says it's not proven from the sunnah that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam like read a piece from here, read a piece from there, or read a piece from there. So I'm just giving you his opinion now, but I can't remember the proofs offhand. This is now from so many years ago, but I think he's got his proofs. And the other ulama that say you can do it, they've got their proofs also. Maybe one day if I find the proofs, I will discuss it again with you. So to answer the question in brief, or the question I asked, can you do? Yes, according to all our ulama, most of our ulama, you can do that. You're gonna maybe read 4 rakats, tahajjud namaz, whatever. You split up Surah Yasin over the 4 rakats. You can do that. That's according to ulama. But as I said, Mawlana Fadhur Rahman, our Sheikh al Hadith from Darum, that was the Sheikh al Hadith of Darum Azadal, he was against that. He said either choose a long surah from the Masnoon Kirat or choose a short surah. Don't break it up. Don't take portion there, right? But I told you most of the ulama, they don't agree with that, right? So anyway, so what Imam Shafi is saying, he's saying, look here, that Qiraat is a rukn of Salah. Qiraat is a rukn of Salah. And so if it's a rukn, that means everybody must be part of must have a share of the rukn. The Muqtadi must have a share, and the Imam must have a share of the. So that means the Muqtadi and the Muqtadi and the what you call it and the Imam both must recite. You understand what I'm saying? So see, that's what he's saying. Lahu, he said, anna al-qira'ata ruknun min al-arkani. That according to Imam Shafi, that Qiraat ruknum min al-arkani, it is a rukn, it's a farz from amongst the farais salah. So like how he's saying, look here, you know, we know that ruku is faraz. Well, you say no, if the Imam makes ruku, then Muqtadi don't have to make ruku. Will you do that? You won't do that. You say no, if the Imam make ruku, also the Muqtadi must make ruku. So this is Imam Shafi's reasoning that if Qiraat is faraz in Salah, or Qiraat is wajib, whatever, when the Imam makes, then the Muqtadi must also make. The Muqtadi must also make, right? So, Ruknu min al-arkani fayashtarikani fi. So, our answer is, وَلَنَا قَوْلُهُ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. We have a clear hadith. مَنْ كَانَ لَهُ إِمَامٌ فَقِرَاءَةُ الْإِمَامِ لَهُ قِرَاءَةٌ. We say, look here, the hadith is quite clear and emphatic that whoever has an Imam, then the Qiraat of the Imam will suffice as his Qiraat. So that means even though we agree it's a rukn, etc., but we're saying, look here, that responsibility will be fulfilled on behalf of the Imam, right? So we saying that, look here, it is a rukn, but when the Imam recites, then he's fulfilling his responsibility on behalf of the Muqtadi understood, see, man kana lahu imamun, who has an imam, faqira'atul imami qira'atun, فقراءته. So then the qiraat of the Imam is the qiraat for him. وعليه إجماع الصحابة, and we say, look here, we also have unanimity amongst all the Sahaba Ikram that rukniyat can be fulfilled by the Imam, right? Right. So we're saying وهو ركن مشترك بينهما. It is a rukn that is shared by the two of them. وهو ركن مشترك. لكن حظ, so I say rukn that will be executed and discharged by both of them, right? Right? But each one has his own role. Lakin, like how I told you, you got a train and you got the engine that is pulling the carriages. Like how you got the train and you got the carriages, right? So now, what? Even though the carriages is part of the train, but what is the work of the engine? The work of the engine is to pull, right? And what's the work of the carriages? The work of the carriages is just to follow suit. So that's what we're saying here. لكن حظ المقتدي الإنصات. The share of the muqtadi is to listen. His part of fulfilling the rukniyat is what is to listen to the qiraat of the imam, right? Right. لكن حظ المقتدي الإنصات والاستماع, right? قال عليه السلام, and the Nabi said, right, وإذا قرأ فأنصتوا. When the imam recites فأنصتوا, then you remain silent, right? ويستحسن على سبيل الاحتياط فيما يرى محمد ويقرأ عندهما لما فيه من الوعيد. So there is a riwayat of Imam Muhammad. Imam Muhammad says, in light of all the hadith of the Quran that exists, that you must recite Surah Fatiha, maybe it's a good idea to refer the Muqtadi to recite Surah Fatiha. They say, وَيُسْتَحْسَنُ, it is good, على سبيل الاحتياط, just to be on the side of caution, فيما يروى, in that which has been narrated, an Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wasallam, from Imam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But ويقرأ عندهما لما فيه من الوعيد, but according to Shaykhain, it is makruh, right? وَيُقْرَأْ إِنَّهُمَا لِمَا فِيهِ, because of the warning that is there. The warning, what is the warning? That you must remain silent. In fact, here in the Hasha, it's not mentioned there, but they mentioned a few warnings, hadith. Yeah, there's a warning here, mentioned the hadith that, see, I'll just, yeah, I found it quickly. مَنْ قَرَأَ خَلْفَ الْإِمَامِ مَنْ قَرَأَ خَلْفَ الْإِمَامِ فِيهِ جَمْرَةٌ وَقَالَ أخطأ السنة. And that person who recites behind the imam, and as though he's got a coal of fire in his mouth, and he has gone against the sunnah. And in another riwayat it says that as Umar radiallahu ta'ala who said, as Umar radiallahu said, في فم الذي يقرأ خلف الإمام حجر أو غير ذلك, that I wish that there's a stone or a rock in the mouth of the person who wants to read behind the imam. So we don't accept Imam Muhammad's call. We say that, look here, there's so severe warnings. And then also there's a riwayat. Remember, once Nabi was reading Salah, and after his Salah, he got a bit confused in the Qiraat, and he said, Mali unaza'u fil qiraati. Why am I being competed for what? That, you know, the duty of the Imam is to recite, and the duty of you people is to listen. So why are you people competing with me in the recitation? So that is why we say, in light of these hadith, it says that so we say, in light of all of these hadith, don't recite. Don't say it's better to recite, right? So وَيَسْتَمِعُ, he will listen, وَيُنْصِتُ, and he will remain silent. وَإِنْ قَرَأَ الْإِمَامُ آيَةَ التَّرْغِيبِ وَالتَّرْهِيبِ, even if the imam recites a verse of targhib, encouragement, or tarhib, or a verse of warning, still you must remain silent. لأن الاستماع والإنصات فرض بالنفس, because listening and remaining silent, fardun, it is compulsory by the text. The text is quite clear and emphatic, right? والقراءة وسؤال الجنة وتعوذ من النار كل ذلك مخل به. So to recite, right, you know, behind the imam, right? وَسْوَالُ الْجَنَّةِ, or to, when the verses of Jannat come, to ask for Jannat, or وَالتَّعَوُّذِ مِنَ النَّارِ, or when the verses of Jahannam is recited, to seek protection in it, etc. كل ذلك مخل به. It interferes with your mandate. What is your mandate? Your mandate is to what? Is to listen and to remain silent, right? وكذلك في الخطبة, and the same thing must be in the khutbah, that you must listen and you mustn't respond to the verses. Okay, let's stop there. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow.